you all. This topic is on the future of the brokerage industry, how to survive, thrive, or goodbye. So we're going to start, and again, our distinguished panels represent the leadership of our brokerage community. We have Avison Young Colliers and RESF represented, as well as Jorge happens to be the president of the YPN. So this is the future of commercial real estate right here, and the leaders. I'm going to start with a few questions, first directed at each one of you, and then from the fourth question on, I want you to all jump in. Just let me know if you want to add to the answer. So first, a question to George. We want to know a little bit about the newest technologies and tools that brokerages are adopting as essential, which did not exist.
So when it comes to technology, technology should really simplify the process. Anything that complicates it, I think is hurting our industry. When it comes to technology, I sort of break it up into different sectors. I'll give you an example. When it comes to marketing, we've seen a huge growth in this sector when it comes to 3D renderings, when it comes to high definition video, when it comes to renderings and animation. I think that's the ability to send these commercial properties anywhere in the world, now that we're a world market, I think has been a game changer from a marketing perspective. And technology has definitely led the way. From a research perspective, to be honest with you, we lean heavily on, most of the industry's go-to tools. CoStar, LoopNet has been most of our strong adapters.
Xceligent.
Yeah, Xceligent. Another space for me that I've seen a great growth recently has been collaboration between our clients and our deals. For example, softwares like Hightower and View That Space. The ability to show where the transaction is, I think has been a game changer in our industry, especially when owners really want to know what we're doing, when we're doing, or where our deal is.
Yeah, George is relating to View the Space, also known as VTS, as well as Hightower. These are platforms that are fairly new, and some of the industries have adopted them, some of the brokerages, and it allows the landlords, the owners, the asset managers to log in 24/7 and see how well we're doing our job.
And my last, and then I'll pass it over. My last one is Sonar. Have you guys seen Sonar? The ability to get highest and best, in the click of a button has really changed our ability to really, do some research for our clients. So we've seen a huge space. I see our industry, as real estate practitioners really having to invest in this latest trends in order to deliver our clients the level of service that they expect.
Excellent. Ken, any of these platforms that Jorge mentions or any others that you have had experience with, and let us know how easy it is or how difficult for your agents, for your associates to get in line and learn how to use them.
I think in general, technology is a real disruptor in today's industry, and the people that understand how to use it and understand how to interact with their clients in a truly transparent manner. So a VTS is a perfect example. Every time you're showing space, every time you're receiving a proposal, it's in real live time. So the brokers that understand how to really be the, I call it the human that interacts with the technology, because the technology is really making the data a commodity. Everybody can see it. Everybody has access to it. The question is, how do you interpret it? What do you do with it? The brokers that truly understand that and embrace the transparency with their clients are the ones that I think are going to survive and thrive in the future.
Yes, and as we know, that transparency is a millennial trait. And so that goes hand in hand with everything we're seeing in our society as far as having that data available to everyone. Okay, so Pike, this is for you. What is driving the recent mergers and acquisitions in our industry, and how does it affect the individual broker?
So one of the things that I've learned as I've the last several years out recruiting and acquiring boutique companies across the state is what I call the Walmartization of our industry. So Wall Street has discovered that the services business actually makes money. And if you look at the top national companies, they're either publicly traded or owned by hedge funds and about to go public. And so basically as a broker you have a choice. You either work for a private group, open your own shop, or you work for a national firm that is owned by somebody who's not in your business. And so I think the effect is when the profits aren't there and the returns aren't there, how does the management respond to that individual broker? So I think that as all of you go through your career and decide who do I want to hang my shingle with, you've got to know who owns the house and where are those dollars going. If I'm going to give 50% back to the house, where are those dollars going? It has an impact on your career and how they're going to be supporting you and putting the brand behind you.
In that same light, should a broker specialize or be a generalist in today's environment, keeping in mind all these forces beyond, I guess, the broker's control, like M&As? Should we specialize or should we be generalists as we have been in the past?
Is that for me?
Yes.
So I am a very strong believer in specialization. I think I touched every asset class and every, there's only two players in our business. It's the occupier and the investor. And I think I touched every asset class somewhere along in my career and ultimately gravitated to office and probably more predominantly on the landlord side. A physician once told me that he said, I don't know a little about a lot, but I know a lot about a little. And I think that's what the client is looking for. The client is looking for you to be the expert in the sandbox that you're playing in the geographic area that you're playing in. Doesn't mean that you're not going to transact outside of that to make money and put food on the table. But at some point in time, the client, the industry is looking for your brand, your identity, and that comes through specialization.
Ken, do you want to add?
Yeah, I would agree. I think more so now than ever, because if you truly believe that the data is a commodity, I mean, it used to be you had to go to a broker to find out what spaces were available. You had to go to a broker to figure out, what the comps were and so on and so forth. All of that is a commodity, in today's day. So the question is, what does it mean? And to really understand that, you need to be a true expert. How are you going to differentiate yourself in an area when the data is truly, a commodity? And that's where the, specialization comes into play. Because I think the brokers that are just sort of general, practitioners in today's world, not to say that people are can't make a living or won't be able to to do deals with friends and family and so on and so forth. But if people really want to become a differentiator, if people really want to reach the top echelon in our business, you've got to become a true expert. And so more so now than ever, because the data and the technology is approaching at such a speed that if you're not able to really differentiate yourself, you become a commodity like the data.
George?
So when it comes to specialization, absolutely. And I'll give you a great example. If I get a general letter in the mail, I'll definitely hire an attorney. But if I'm getting a divorce, I'm going to find a great family attorney to represent me. With that being said, even when you do specialize, and I'll give you an example. If I have a retail assignment and my landlord is looking for some specific subset, like a restaurant or some high-end clothing store, I might, even being a specialist in retail, I might recruit somebody who's specialist in that sub-specific field like restaurant and even bring them in. So specializing does add value, especially for the client. And I think even as a general practitioner or a specialist, bringing in more people who are better suited for that role, I think really enhances the level of service that you give to your client. So absolutely.
Excellent. So as far as brokerage itself, when you do your listings, when you work your listings, should you go at it alone or be on a team? And I want to start over here again with Pike and get all of your opinions. Alone or on a team?
So the saying that I always remember is, if you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. Teaming is the only way to go, in my opinion. It's very important. And, before I finish answering your question, I'm really curious. Can I see a show of hands, the last 5 years, how many of you, the majority of your transactions were done with institutional investors? Last 5 years, majority of your transactions. So that assumes that the predominantly most of you are dealing with local private owners of property, right? So I think that has a lot to do with your strategy of, do I specialize? Do I belong to a team? Do I go individual? Who is the client? Where are they sitting right now? How am I going to pursue them? How am I going to win their business? And again, over 30 years of doing this, I've seen teams be far more successful than individuals.
Ken?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that hasn't changed in, the almost, 30 years that I've been doing this as well. That, everybody needs a partner, and the area of specialization, again, is increasing today, but even 10, 15, 20 years ago, everybody wasn't great at everything. People weren't the best canvassers looking for business. People weren't the best technicians in terms of, reading leases. So I think the concept of teaming is building upon your earlier area about specialization. I think it's only gotten more acute, in today's world.
So I think that there's no individual out there that can perform the services of a team, working for a client. With that being said, what I have noticed a lot lately with the team, outside the team, is really more collaboration with other real estate experts outside your company. So I've seen, agents who've identified, really good professionals in a certain sector and said, hey, let's work this together. So not only, our team's very valuable and that definitely benefit the client, but their ability to go out there and bring in good talent to help their deals as well, I've seen as a major trend going on.
So more flexibility.
Absolutely. More creativity in this market.
Okay, so this is for all of you, and it has several parts, so hear me out. Are firms relying on their own research department or somebody else's data? What do customers expect when it comes to research and advice from the broker? And how is the industry shifting in terms of customer expectations?
Let me go first. So there's been a huge information revolution going on, and what I've noticed is that a lot of the information that's out there, is easily accessible to most brokers who are willing to pay for a lot of that information. I think in today's age, clients don't want great information, they expect great information. So I think it's, very valuable. And clients' expectations for me is really information at the speed of now. They want the research done now, they want to present it, and they want clear facts.
The question was about sort of research in general, and I think today's world is more about really interpreting. You give a research report, we give our typical, market report that says vacancy rate went from 12% to 11.3%. Who cares? What does that mean? Nobody understands what any of that means to them and to their business. So unless you really understand your client, their needs, their business, what they expect out of research is really highly specialized to them and to their needs. So a lot of the traditional sort of market data that's out there is pretty much irrelevant to most people, because again, at the end of the day, all the typical statistics, leasing rate, velocity, absorption, so on and so forth, doesn't mean anything to anybody unless you can really tailor it to their specific needs. So I think that's what they expect in terms of research. What they expect is really analysis and care and concern for them and for their business. They don't care about market statistics and so on and so forth.
I
So
think...
Excuse me, to Ken's point,
oh, sorry.
I think what I hear clients asking year after year, day after day, is, tell me something I don't know. You're on the ground, you're in the trenches, you're immersed into transactions, you're networking with your other brokers, you've got the intel, you've got the on-the-ground intel that the research reports, CoStar, a lot of the electronic data doesn't have. Tell me something I don't know. And that requires digging, and that's what separates you from, the information.
Yes, I think Wayne touched upon that in the previous panel where he said that we need the data to be refined. That, you have all this data, but then what are we going to do with it?
If every company like ours and, all the typical, stopped producing our typical quarterly reports, the world would not stop and nobody would care, nobody would notice.
Okay.
At the end of the day, people really are not relying on those general, data points for how it drives their decision and what they do. So the whole concept of research and data, because the Xceligents and the CoStars and the so on and so forth, quite honestly, produce the same amount of data with a quantity and a quality, better than we do. We don't, but that's not where our expertise is needed. We really need to figure out what does it mean, and really, to Pike, what's coming next, or why should I go here, or who else is doing, something, innovative and creative.
Right, and to that point, as we turn to the new year, we have all these forecasts and all these, CCIM has a wonderful beginning of the year forecast, as well as Crew Miami, Commercial Real Estate Women. And what I find is that our clients, our customers are asking us to tell them what we see ahead, because there is so much uncertainty. And this coming January, we will have a new administration, so we're even going to have to give more insight into what we think is coming, because they would be drastically different policies. Okay, not to get into politics.
My microphone's not working.
Good. Okay, so what are some of the best practices to help the commercial real estate broker today? So if you want to it could be anything, best practices.
I would definitely get involved with the RCA. I think our board does a phenomenal job of giving instructions, classes, and meetings that I think anybody who's part of our industry should be a part of it, just to sort of be in the know and get involved. So you know what, just to add up on that, I'm probably one of the youngest brokers here as a company.
What?
Yeah, as a company. And, I definitely leverage, the RCA and the tools they have to get my agents involved, introduced, and learn. So I think it's been a phenomenal.
It's really a shortcut to commercial, really. The classes that they give at RCA, they're free for our members, and they really encompass 1, 2, 3. I mean, the 101, if you want to really get a fast track, like Pike said. Ken, any best practices you can share?
I mean, it's sort of a general statement, but the brokers who are obsessively curious and intellectually attentive to what's going on in the world around them are constantly sort of seeing some of the new trends and the new data and the new information that's out there. So the people that sort of think I've been doing this for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever the case may be, and I know the business, I know the market, I know what I'm doing, are the ones who are, I think, going to struggle mightily into the future. So being sort of obsessed about learning what you don't know and continuing to learn is a continual best practice, I think.
So I claimed a best practice from Jose Juncadella, and I claimed it for my own and stole it from him. I asked Jose when I joined Codina, I asked Jose to come to Fort Lauderdale and sit down with my brokers up there, and of course, I knew what a tremendously talented broker he was, and so forth, and I really wanted to get some of his secrets, and so he sat around the table of our brokers up there, and he shared something very simple and very basic. He said, every morning before the bell rings, you make a list, a to-do list, of what you're going to do for every single client that you're working on, that you're working with that day. And it may be 3 or 4 or 5 things, but if you make a list of the things that you're going to proactively do for your client, then at the end of the week, if you're doing 1 thing a day, you've done 5 things for your client at the end of the week and 20 things at the end of the month. And when you have a marketing report, you can, brag to your client, here are all the things that I did for you this month. And it sounds very simple, it sounds very basic, but at the end of the day, it's strategic, and it's purposeful, and it's thoughtful before the bell rings, before it gets busy, and you get distracted. Think through what you're going to proactively do, and then hold yourself accountable to getting it done. And Jose, it works.
He still makes those lists every morning.
I'll bet he does.
Yes.
Does he do it on an iPhone or a piece of paper?
iPad.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I think he uses Tweedledoo or Tweedledoo. Okay. Should we chase institutional clients or private ones? And now you know that most of us here in this room are involved with private owners, but give us your take on that. Who should we be courting?
For me, obviously, institutional is definitely our goal. We have to start with private in order to build ourselves up there. South Florida, if you notice, it's a very tight-knit community, and a lot of private investors have their commercial brokers, and it's really, especially in South Florida, a big relationship-based business, from my observation. I'll let you guys hit the rest of that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it's necessarily a sort of a mutually exclusive thing, because most of our private clients in some way, shape, or form are partnered with or are supported by institutional, capital or institutional partners. So I think, you need to, again, going back to what we were talking about before, you need to differentiate yourself, even though you're talking to potentially a local client, knowing that there might be a sort of an institutional partner that they've got to bring their recommendation to, or so on and so forth. I think you need to be prepared to service the institutional client the same way you would service a private client. So that being said, this is still a market that's driven primarily by local relationships and local knowledge. So those are critically important.
So I'm a proponent of chasing institutions, and I don't come from a national brokerage company. My career was either owning my own shop, or I went to Codina, and Codina was not known as a national company. It was a locally owned private group. But if you look at the profile of the ownership of the commercial real estate in South Florida over the last 30 years, the institutions are becoming more predominant of the ownership profile. And all when we say the word institution, all we're really saying is that, promoters who are out raising money from institutional sources. But I do believe that that's the future of our business. It's becoming the giant, and you're going to have a portfolio of both. You've got to represent the private, but the institutions are here to stay, and they're becoming bigger. And I think getting past the optics, the asset managers in these institutions are becoming younger, and that means they're more focused on quantitative analyses versus that personal relationship. And so the challenge is, they can play it safe and have the top 3 nationals, in their file folder, and they can sit around the investment table and say, I hired CB or Cushman or JLL, and I can't get fired for doing that. But to hire the local expert who is really the right broker to hire, that's our job, to go out and convince them of that. And so I'm a proponent of chasing institutional work as much as possible. It's recurring business.
Excellent. Okay, so all of you are leaders of teams in at least 3 counties, right? South Florida. And we were curious to know what is unique about commercial real estate in Miami-Dade County versus other counties like Broward and Martin counties, and how do you switch hats, so to speak, when you're dealing with your different deals in the different counties?
Let you go first.
So, yeah, I have Avis & Young has 7 offices throughout the state of Florida: Jacksonville, Orlando, Tampa, West Palm, Boca, Fort Lauderdale, Miami. And I have to tell you, every office has a completely different culture than the other one. Miami being the most unique for many different reasons. And so, you know, the culture of the office, you know, is driven largely by the clients that they're chasing and the type of business they want to be in. So we talked about specialty. Well, as you go further north and the markets shrink, the brokers tend to not specialize. They tend to, if they're in the office sandbox, they may be a landlord rep or a tenant rep, and they may sell something now and then. So the specialty tends to be more broader because they have to eat, and so they do more things. So again, the cultures are different, the specialties are different, the responses to who the clients are and where they are and how they go get them. So we literally have 7 different, you know, ways of managing these folks in these offices, and it makes the business unique and it's fun.
Every day is different.
Yeah.
Ken?
So I cover South Florida for Colliers. So, you know, that's kind of, you know, Broward, Miami-Dade, Palm Beach. We have, I don't know, 10 offices around the state, Jacksonville, Orlando, et cetera. I will tell you that from a client perspective, more and more they really view South Florida as one market. And I think we have, you know, really tried to adapt to make sure that we're, you know, responsive to that. Whereas I think a number of years ago, you know, there was a very clear distinction between, you know, companies that only did business in Miami or only did business in Palm Beach or so on and so forth. I think the world is moving to an area now where I think South Florida as a region is really becoming, you know, one. So I do think that, you know, we need to understand that, and it's not so that Miami is one specific. There are going to be certain industries that'll be more prevalent in different markets, and so again, the specialization will play, you know, to that. But I don't know that that's necessarily geographic, as it is, you know, sort of the nature of the type of industries that are, you know, that are growing, that are thriving in those markets.
So we cover from Palm Beach all the way down to the Florida Keys. And I can tell you that the farther south you go, the crazier it gets.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go as far south as the Florida Keys. And last year we sold a marina with some vacation rentals around it. And the way they work over there is sandals, shorts, and you know, Hawaiian shirt. And they call you back a couple days later, and they fax you their contract, you know, a week later. So definitely the farther north you get, I definitely agree with you, the more generalized it is. South Florida, with the competitive nature that it is, definitely you see more specialty in here. But yeah, the souther you go, the more fun you're going to have in your tent.
So how many of you have driven 95 as you enter Martin County and then Palm Beach County and then Broward, and you notice the traffic picks up, people start cutting you off, it becomes more frenetic? And as Monroe's a different county completely. I'm not using Monroe as an example, but again, it's culture. People's behavior is different in these areas because that's what they choose. You choose to live in Miami because it's happening, it's faster, it's more frenetic, and that's the choice. And as you go further north, people tend to slow down. They don't call you back quite quickly as that, and they come in a little bit later. And that's just it. That's the way it is. That's the DNA of the people that want to live in those communities.
Well, according to John Dom, we won't have that problem pretty soon. Okay,
Going to be underwater, right?
okay, George, back to you. We heard about P3s, public-private partnerships. Don't worry, it's not about that. Can you share with us a comment on community involvement, your brokerage, your team's involvement in the community, and how that has changed in recent years, and how is it important to your brokers to be involved in our community?
You know what? I think as a real estate professional, our job is to be in the community first and foremost. And I can tell you this, most of my business is not picked up in the office, it's picked up out there. And our outreach has gone from homeless to Habitat for Humanity, and I think it's pivotal to get involved. I think it helps you grow your business, grow your name, and I think it's your duty to give back. And in life, we've learned that life is a giver's gain. The more you give, the more you gain. And more importantly, as a real estate company in South Florida, I think it's our duty to lead this with our agents.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, you need to be an integral part of your community. How are you going to have the type of deep, meaningful relationships unless you are really, truly embedded and integrated into your community across, all sectors? So, it's incumbent upon the organization. It's incumbent upon the individuals that are in the organization. That's where your meaningful relationships are going to be built. It's going to be built at the community level, and that's ultimately we are still in a relation. With everything that we've talked about, with all the data and so on and so forth, relationships are the differentiator. How you become a truly trusted advisor to people only comes from when you establish those deep relationships. And I think when people know and see you as part of their community, as part of their life, on the soccer field, at church, working at a soup kitchen, they know that you're committed to them and their community.
Boy, I couldn't emphasize that any better. Well said. I push all my brokers to be involved in nonprofits, charitable industry organizations, but I also push them not to be a spectator, to be a participant. Don't show up to a breakfast and throw your cards around the table because they're just going to be in the trash can on the way out. If you're going to be involved in these organizations, get on a committee. Become the chair of the committee. Become impactful. Once you become the chair of the committee, move to the board level, get to the presidency, but move in an impactful way and volunteer your time so that the people around that table and the people next to you see that, oh, so if that's the work they do on a volunteer basis, boy, the work they do for pay must be, pretty impressive. And so they're going to want to give you business. And it's very, very important to be an active participant.
I would agree. I'll give you a quick little story. I agree with that completely. Do things that you care about, that you're passionate about. And funny, quick little story. So this is 30 years ago. A colleague of mine was on the board. He was helping a group where you help homeless people get jobs. Small little nondescript nonprofit. Nobody ever heard of it. Not even on the radar screen. But that was what he was into. That was what he was passionate about. Went to all the committee meetings. Was involved. So on and so forth. 15 years later, he gets a call from the chairman of Ernst & Young, who says, "You don't remember me. We were on a board together, 15 years ago. I remember you showing up. I remember you working. I followed your career." And lo and behold, we ended up representing them for their headquarters for 1 million square feet.
Wow.
Call came out of the blue because he saw the work that he did on a nonprofit, 15 years ago when he was a kid. But he believed in the organization. He believed in what he was doing. And that just shows. I mean, listen, we can't underestimate the passion that people have for this business. If you're not passionate about this business and about the people you work with and the clients you're serving, people see that. And if you don't know how to serve food, then you're not going to be able to.
Maria, I want to emphasize for the younger folks in the audience the patience that it's required. This is a marathon race. This is not a sprint. You know, when it comes to participation in industry organizations like this one or nonprofits, you're not going to show up to a breakfast or a lunch or a dinner and come away with business. Don't even think about it. It's a marathon race. It takes a long time. It's about cultivating relationships over a long period of time. And again, think in terms of just putting in the miles, and it does pay off, absolutely.
And long for some of our millennials is very long. So, you know, there's that get quickly to the next stage type of mentality. One other thing that I think community involvement really helps is with the team building. We tend to work in silos now that we can work from anywhere. And at least in our office, if we're not out in the field showing property, we're not doing our job. And we're all connected to our server, which means we don't have to be in the office. So that camaraderie and that team building, you know, is sometimes lacking, and we have to make an effort. I think that's where community involvement, you know, plays an extra important part of keeping your team together and having a focus on something other than the bottom line, you know, your pocket. Okay, so Pike, thoughts on internships and mentorships for those just getting into commercial real estate?
I'm a very strong believer in internships. There's quite a bit of young talent coming out of, just look at the universities we have here in the Tri-County area between FIU, Broward College, Nova, FAU, Palm Beach Atlantic. I'm sure I'm missing some, but we go into those universities and we look for young folks that, you know, typically they'll have a finance degree, or in some cases there's real estate related programs. But I just hired a junior broker in Tampa that had a sociology degree, and the interview just went that way. I just felt like, you know, she was wanted to go that route. So we're very big on internships, and other than FSU, I have to tell you something. You know, after 30 years in this business, isn't it amazing that our business, there can be so many people that can make so much money and be so successful, and yet colleges ignore the service business. Think about brokerage, property management, project management, all the things that are related to what we do. And there's no university that actually has a degree program in this extremely lucrative field. It's almost like, you know, we're a stepchild or something. And yeah, go into finance, go be a, how many programs have development programs? What do you mean you're going to graduate and be a developer? Really? Yeah. I mean, give me a break. Learn how to transact first and then go, you know, graduate to being a developer. But in any event, internships are important. That's how they learn the business. That's how they learn our vocabulary. And then we like to graduate them to junior broker. So we put them on a year's salary as a junior broker. So again, they can learn even more. And then ultimately we throw them in the deep end and say swim as an independent contractor.
You want me to go? So I'll share with you this. This year we had 2 interns, unfortunately from the University of Florida. So if there's anybody out there, my deepest apologies. Let me be honest with you. We learned a lot from them. You'd be surprised what this young energy brought in. We sort of showed them how we worked, how we communicated, how we marketed, and believe it or not, they gave us some tips. And I'm going to credit my wife Denora for this stat. But I don't know if you guys know this, but in the next 10 years, we have the largest group in history coming in with the greatest amount of wealth coming into the prime spending years, which are millennials. And,
I think they're already here.
But they're coming into the prime spending years, which is in the next 10 years. And believe it or not, as real estate practitioners, we're going to have to create and curate our content and our marketing to this generation if we want to sort of stay in front of this. And they gave us great insight. And they gave us insight on how they market, how they communicate, how they socialize, how they vet professionals. Nowadays it's no longer about a business card. It's sort of your online resume. When I go online and I Google you, do I see your mugshot or do I see all your real estate transactions? And, this new generation, doesn't trust first. They verify and then they trust. So, it was a great insight. and at the same time, teaching them our industry and trying to spark that love that we've had through our history was also enjoyable. When it comes to mentoring, if there's an agent that's willing and wanting to learn, I think it's a tremendous benefit. I think it takes a very special person to mentor first and foremost, and I think somebody that is willing to go under your wing and learn under you, I think it's a great opportunity. And if you want to learn, there's no better way than in the act of.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If you don't have a mentor, get one. It's never too late, and if you've had a mentor, you know the benefit of that, and then you will take on that relationship, and you will give back. It is invaluable. I still speak to the person that was my mentor 30 years ago on a fairly regular basis, and it's a continually learning relationship, and extremely valuable. And go back to kind of like internships and etc. I think it's really a challenge for us. I agree with you as a profession. Because the skills and the time that's necessary for people to be successful today is really elongated, and we as a company, as a firm, as an industry, need to sort of meet those goals. So what we do now is when we bring people in, we put them on a year program where they rotate through every discipline of our firm. We call it the Accelerate program, but they spend project management, property management, appraisal. They spend their time throughout all of the disciplines of our industry because they're not learning that in college, and they're not learning the practical, experiences that they need to sort of, enable their career. It's really a graduate degree. They graduate college, but, the equivalent of, the first 2 to 3 years that they're in the business is really a graduate degree. And we really need to invest in that sort of post graduate degree, because to just sort of throw people out into the business today without the skills and without the the support that they need, whether it's internships, mentorships, etc., is really setting people up to fail.
So Maria, I took 3 interns to lunch. And I said, you guys have it so easy, this technology revolution and social media, you have it so much easier than I did. So I shared a story about schlepping 4 hard copy leases, in my car to the lawyer's office, and my beeper went off. And so I, pulled up to a payphone and I called, and then, I made changes, and I'm pulling out whiteout, and I'm changing the leases, and I'm handwriting stuff and schlepping them to the attorney, and there's silence. And one of them said, "What's a beeper?" And the second one said, "What's a payphone?" And then the third one said, "What's whiteout?" And I'm like, "You 3 are all fired. We're going to go home."
It's really amazing. So I would be remiss if I don't mention, as past president of Crew Miami, that Commercial Real Estate Women has an e-mentoring program, since we're all so busy. And to Ken's point, time is our issue with trying to mentor more young individuals, and we do. Crew has a wonderful program where they pair up a senior, a veteran, with somebody who needs mentorship, but it's electronic. So in learning from that program, I tend to copy or blank copy our junior brokers that are just starting in my office, for them to get a feel for the discussions, whether it be an issue on a clause on a lease or property management. And they must wonder, why is Maria copying me on all this? But if they scroll down, there's a lesson there to learn. So I think that's a good habit when you have young people in your office, to copy them on things obviously not confidential, but let them know that there is a lesson and there's a reason why you copied them on an email. Okay, so the last, doesn't have to relate, this last question specifically on any course or any specific study on in real estate. What recently acquired skill, and you don't all have to answer, whoever wants to, has helped you become a better industry professional, whether it be yoga or something that you've recently picked up that you've added to your toolkit or has given you a more flexible solution set? Anything you can think about it a little?
Oh, yoga has given me a more flexible body. I don't know
Okay.
about solution set. You know what? I might be a late adapter, but I want to say 3 or 4 months ago, I jumped into a client relationship manager. And I thought for me, it was a game changer. You know, the ability to organize, create pipelines, and, you know, reach out to your clients on a consistent basis was one that I took a while. And when I jumped into it, I was pleasantly surprised. And, you know, I had some disappointments as well in some of those people that I didn't reach out to on time. And those that I reached out to on time were greatly appreciative of, you know, the fact that I was on top of it. So,
Paul, write that down so he can teach a class.
What CRM are
so I'm using Contactly now, but I'm going to be honest with you. It doesn't matter which CRM you use. CRMs are like the gym. If you go there and you work out, you're going to get big and strong. You just got to pick one and do one. So,
Anything else?
You know, going back to what you said before with regards to time, one this is more of a personal thing, but I think what I've learned lately, last year or so, is just really how to take better care of myself, eating and sleeping, so that when I do have time with my clients and my family, I'm at a sort of at a better emotional state, because you can be consumed by trying to, you know, sort of chase your tail all day long and respond to every email, and to just, you know, constantly be, you know, running and chasing. So just sort of, it's a skill to really kind of manage, you know, how, so that you're able to eat better, sleep better, and then you're able to actually, you know, function better.
Yeah, I'm all in for daily exercise, cardio, and weightlifting, and I think it's not optional. It's got to become a lifestyle, and it certainly keeps you healthy. As far as letters after my name, I have none. I'm a seven semester college attendee, non-graduate. I was married in my junior year in college, and swore I would go back and finish, and I never did. So there's hope for some of you who are out there without the college degree. But I do have a degree from
Okay,
I do have a degree from the School
two
of
in
Hard
our
Knocks.
panel. That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah.
And a lot of our unicorn CEOs as well. That's interesting. I'm the opposite. I promised myself I would get an MBA, and I decided to go back to school to fulfill that on my bucket list just recently, and I was 15 years older than everybody else in the class, but I added a few letters to my last name, which is already very long, but either way it works. Well, I want to thank you all. I want you to think of any questions that you have for our distinguished panel of expert leaders in our field. Anybody have any questions?
We have time for 2 or 3 questions.
see one back there.
Right here. Stand up and speak loudly.
Juan Gallardo, with Hickey & Associates. Do you expect, say, Colliers acquiring further, or Edison Young, or Seniority, to continue the acquisition of medium and smaller firms as we go?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the consolidation in our industry is only going to continue. I think, as Pike mentioned, I think companies have understood the power of capital, how to use it, effectively. This is a good business to be in. It's a good business to invest in. It's really the way, if you want to continue to grow. Yes, you can make your brokers more productive. Yes, you can hire a broker here or there. But ultimately, if you really want to have, long, sustained, growth, you're going to need to continue to, acquire and to continue to fill, strategic gaps, geographically or otherwise. So I don't see any, slowing down at all. Even as more and more of the, kind of the public capital really understands our business model, I think it's only going to accelerate.
So for Avis and Young, we specifically have a growth strategy of acquiring boutique companies. And in my travels around Florida, the owners of these small groups want to chase institutional work, and they're struggling to get in the door because they don't have that national affiliation behind them. So that's a big motivator. And the second motivator is 45, 50, beyond. They're sort of waking up and saying, well, what's my exit strategy for monetizing the value that I've created with this company that I own after all these years? I want something to show for it. And now the window's open and the time is right, in my opinion, to take a look at that.
One more question?
You know what, I'll just touch on that. You know, I think when the market's hot, the market's good, the economy's good. I think that anytime you have those two factors, anybody in the real estate industry and the real estate services are doing good, bottom lines are looking good, and anytime you have that opportunity, I think that big companies go in there and they step up. You know, instead of growing their company organically, I think that you know, going after these companies gives them a better market share much quicker than normal times. So I've seen that trend, and I've seen that trend increase, not only in the commercial market, but recently in the residential market, really aggressively as well. So if you guys are looking for awesome boutique companies,
Call you.
Not here. Anyway, I'll give a short, our hashtags of the day, based on what our panelists shared with us, is data as commodity, teams, curious, analyze, to-do lists, relationships, long-term, eat better, sleep better, cardio, and exit strategy. So thank you so much.